Sorry about that, John. I'm on steroids right now. My stomach's like going haywire.
Shit, isn't that bad? The tonsils?
Yeah.
You were really at the hospital for that? That
Yep.
just kind of flabbergasted me. It didn't even register when you said it the other day.
Leo Saul was like, "Get your fucking ass to the hospital before I beat your fucking ass."
Mm-hmm.
I was having trouble breathing. I mean, they were fucking
that bad?
Yeah.
Fuck.
I didn't go to the hospital. I went to the MD now, but it's the same thing. If anything, it was worse. I had to pay out of pocket.
Right, yeah. I was wondering how that would work. But it's probably still cheaper than going to a ER or something.
Right.
Like you'd be down like a few $1,000s right now if you went to an ER.
That's why I didn't want to go.
Yeah. I'd almost rather just die than deal with all that.
I mean, that's the point of that right now.
It makes me so angry how it works. I'm fucking so lucky right now. I finally got health insurance through my job. Yeah, but I had Obamacare, which was costing me like $300-$400 a month. Or it's gonna cost me that when I do my taxes because I fucked it up and I didn't tell them I had a job. So now you know how that works. They basically give you a credit every month for hundreds of dollars based off of not having any money. But if you have a little bit of money, then they don't give you shit. So stupid. Basically, you owe them.
Right.
It's gonna be fun. That's gonna be fun doing taxes. Can't wait. But hear that little bitterness. Whenever I think of the healthcare system, it just makes me so angry because I know eventually it's gonna fuck
you
me.
were just hyping it up like Obamacare is the best thing that ever happened.
It was when I was broke. It was the shit.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. You've fallen into the crack because you have a little bit of money.
Yeah, exactly. You get a part-time job, and all of a sudden, you have to pay hundreds of dollars. It's like maybe I shouldn't work.
That's why the system is stupid, because it rewards you for not working, but it punishes you for working and being broke. You know what I mean? So food stamps are the same way, you get so much in food stamps if you're not working, but like once you get a job and you're trying to there's no such thing as a system of government that exists for people who are working and need a boost, especially if you're making like 30 grand a year, forget about it. You're just fucked. It's like, yeah, I fucking work all day, and at the end of the year I have no money. But I'm barely able to scrape by with the things. But here's the thing, like if I get sick, I'm fucked. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you'd think once they establish a safety net, they would like put a ladder nearby, But no, they just fucking push you off the cliff back into another net.
Yeah.
Or with no net, maybe.
So it all just becomes really frustrating,
Yeah, it's stupid. It's fucking dumb.
Fucking working 2 jobs last semester, and the most I was able to save was $1,000. And it's like, that barely covers the 2 weeks that I'm out of work,
Yeah, it doesn't cover shit. It goes so fast.
Especially if I get sick. Like I got sick, so I'm just fucked.
Kind of like the stimulus checks. Here's $1,200 to live on for 3 fucking years. Well, they did have the, there was the unemployment thing, which is great for a little while, but I don't know. It's all just kind of shitty. It's all shitty.
Well, the whole system none of it makes any fucking sense, especially in the fields that we chose. You would think that education would have this robust, like all these robust jobs, given how much education we had to get to be educators. But the truth is, you have to fight for every little scrap of fucking work that you get, and none of it pays enough until you finally get through like the golden gates of either getting into administration, K through 12, or getting into getting like on the board, not on the board, but like officially working for the university at the university level or even the college level. You have to be working for the college, not a fucking what's the word? Contracted employee. Like the contract is the killer, man. Because once the contract's up, you're just fucked.
That's kind of how it works in a lot of like professions, like even Laura's job, technically, even though she works, it's so fucked up. She's a contractor actually, but it's not as like it's not as like insecure as an academic, like an adjunct or something. But there's still like, even on her team, there's like two like actual government employees. They basically got tenure, as it were, and then the rest, like three other people, are like contractors, and they have a contract that renews every 3 years or whatever.
Dude, that's
Um,
insane.
isn't that so stupid? So it creates a kind of a weird dynamic with the people you work with. Like, oh, you got all the benefit, because they get way better benefits. They get paid more.
Or
They do way less. They get like fucking an insane amount of time off every year. It's crazy. So like that's just how the system works. Like, it allows for that sort of thing within the law. So of course it's going to happen, right? These companies don't give a fuck about anybody. The whole point of a company is to make money. So
right.
they're gonna,
Well,
that's
that's everywhere. That's every agenda across the board. It's
But
just
it's just so sad that it's so entrenched in academia too, because that should be a sacred place. Um, just
anything but. Man.
you should be rewarding students. Anybody who wants to go to school should be rewarded for that idea to do that, and to become a teacher, the one that's teaching them. Like, you get shit on the most in
Yeah.
that business. It sucks. Fucking sucks. That's why I didn't get a teaching job when I moved up here. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna just float around and see what happens for a while, because that's basically the same fucking thing. And I worked at a
Yeah.
shitty ass job for a year, and I quit that, and then I, floated around, found this job, and you know, whatever. It's whatever at this point. I mean, I don't like. I want to teach. I would love to teach one class. Eventually, I don't know. Like, I could have done it. I could have tried this semester. Or this past 4 months ago. It's been 4 months since the semester started. Jesus. Um, I could have. I didn't even try, because I was like, I don't have the motivation to fucking subject myself to that anymore.
Just apply for like lit classes and poetry classes.
Yeah.
Like, fuck them. If a lit class opens up, I'll teach a lit class. If a poetry class opens up, I'll teach a poetry class. But as far as everything else, suck my fucking dick.
The other
You
part
know?
of me thinks I'm one of those people like Winston. One of the teachers like Winston. Whereas you were kind of like in the more La Rocca side of things. I feel like Winston couldn't like teach and write, or at least I actually don't have that problem. I have the more of the problem. I can't teach if I'm not writing well. We've talked about this. Like,
Right.
I don't like teaching when I'm in a funk, which, as you go on, I think the funks are like most of the time for me.
Yeah.
Like, you get a poem, but if you're not like, I don't know. Anyway,
You're not,
if
you're
you're
not
not
riding
hammering
off
out,
of the high of writing something great.
yeah,
It's
if you're
hard to
not
follow
hammering
up.
out exactly. Yeah, sorry. Yeah,
I
if you're
get
not
it.
hammering out a great poem every week, or at least every couple weeks, then, which is kind of a hard ask. It's a really hard ask. I mean, go read a poetry book, even of a great poet, and not a read poem. Those are the best poems they've written over the course of however long it took to make that book.
Well, it's the hardest art in the fucking world.
Yeah, and only like
know?
maybe
Like,
on a great poetry book, only like five maybe in a book really like floor you. And it's like, god damn. So to ask, so I guess that's the lesson I should take, is like to ask yourself to do that every fucking, even every week or two, is just stupid. You're just gonna hate yourself, because it's never gonna happen. If I get one great poem a
I
year,
feel
I'll
like
be happy.
you're thinking about it like putting the cart before the horse. You can't ask yourself. You can't ask whatever it is in you that writes the poems to do anything. It's a stubborn fucking animal. It's gonna do it when it feels like it. And you just, part of being an artist of any kind is like dealing with that animal, that creates, and it's something separate besides your own consciousness. You know what I mean? It's like this part of your consciousness that your consciousness can't control. And when it feels um like it has something to say, there's nothing you can do to stop it either. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it kind of sounds like. Well, I felt it too, but it's like you're kind of like the whipping boy
Yeah,
to
you
whatever
are.
this like
Good way of putting it.
call it inspiration, whatever. It's like
Inspiration
get
or the
off your
muse or
fucking ass and write this. If you don't write it right now, it's gone forever. Like, and if you disobey, then you're in for a world of shit. You're in hell basically because it's gone. And I've done that so many times where there was a poem there, and I just was like, nah, I'll wait, and then it's gone. It's fucking gone if you wait. You got to hit it that moment, otherwise you don't get it again. And
yeah.
see, I
I think
think
it's
that's
all a mind
different.
fuck until you realize you're supposed to be having fun. You know, and
Yeah,
we're lucky in a way that we never got super famous or super invested in a point, where we're relying on it to pay our bills. But
yeah,
um,
that's a good point actually. Like thinking about. I mean, it's it's easy to say when you
imagine if the next poem was the thing that meant you were going to eat tonight, or you know.
or just
Yeah,
having the pressure. Like if you're in a as a teacher, like what do you do if you're a successful poet? More than likely you're teaching at a school, and you become a draw for up and coming poets and stuff. Um, and you have to earn your spot there by publishing constantly. And I think what
yeah,
happened. I think the truly scary thing is what happens is you just start writing for
just
no
for
good
right,
reason.
right, just right for right.
We've seen it, all these you see books come out by some people we know, like it's it's like you could appreciate it, but it's not like I don't know. There's something lost in it. I mean, there's something to be said for like the craft of writing and like learning how to write and like being able to. All right, I could write a good poem if I really want to. I could write a good poem about anything, but it's not going to be like if you sit with that mindset. That's it goes against the point you were just making about it being kind of like a beast you're trying to tame. You're forcing it to come
So
out,
it's
and
a
it's
beast
like,
that's taming you. So is the way I look at it.
yeah,
You think that you're taming it, but it's taming you. And
yeah,
I don't know. I'm very much persuaded by this idea that the more you try to control this thing, the more fleeting it becomes, the more elusive it becomes. And the less you try to control it, the more it'll guide your hands. Because I mean, really, once you think about it, you're what you're learning to do is trust yourself and trust your instincts, not just in writing, but in life and in the people that you choose to be around and the places that you choose to live and the path of your life. I think that's the guiding force behind why we chose or why we made these decisions all those years ago to begin with is to learn to trust ourselves. Not even just with like the people we're dating or anything, but like you and Laura, you're like, okay, we're gonna go fucking travel for a year. Fuck this, and you have to see all of America, or a lot of America, anyways. More of America than most Americans have ever seen. Um, and you lived in a fucking car during that whole time, or most of the time, anyways. And like stuff like that. Um, just the concept of traveling and everything. It's everything, and
this is why we're not bankers and not or
right. Well,
business owners.
maybe. Um,
Because we decided, fuck it. Like at every whim, we'll just take life by the balls, and
yeah, we're gonna
if that
live
means I'm gonna get a
whimsical.
poetry degree, then fuck it, because that's what I'm gonna do. Because poetry is the shit. Or write a fiction degree, fuck it, why not? It's the most important thing in the world.
Well, I mean, John, at the end of this, we're all dirt in the ground, anyways. you know, whether you're the banker or the real estate mogul or the filmmaker or the guy who paints houses or the guy who shoots porn. Like we're all just fucking gonna be dirt in the ground at some point. So you might as well spend your life pursuing what you want to pursue. Dude, I'm reading this book. Gotta get it, man. Of Human Bondage. by
Oh, good.
Somerset Maugham.
Sounds like a real lighthearted tale.
Uh, it's brutal, dude. It's not about like sexual debauchery or anything. It's about this, or not per. It's not per se about those things. It's about this kid who was born with this club foot. The Rockies talk about this book, and his
Yeah.
mom dies when he's 10 years old, and he's sent to go live with his aunt and uncle, and his uncle is like a minister, and it's just a really dreary life until he's 18 years old. By the way, the first years of his life, he was raised in boarding school where all the kids were mercilessly horrible to him because of his club foot. Um, and then when he finally goes off to college, he decides at first he wants to be an accountant. Isn't good at that. He decides he wants to be a painter. Goes to Paris. He's fairly good at that, but he's not going to be the next Picasso. He discovers, and so he comes back to London, and he's a doctor. And while he's getting his medical degree, he falls in love with this waitress of all people. This fucking like lower class waitress named Mildred. And she's just fucking brutal to him, man. She's such a horrible human being. Um, and he realizes like so much of his life, he's been guided by his own instincts. And the problem was when his instincts made him fall in love with this, waitress, they kind of totally royally fucked up.
I just realized something really funny. I took a literature class, and this book was assigned, and I just never even bought it. Dude, I was such a terrible student.
What was the last book? Was it at FAU?
It was at FAU. I don't know if he's still. I forgot his name. He was such a sweetheart of a teacher, though. He was kind of this dorky white guy, older, like real thick glasses.
Blakemore.
Blakemore, yeah, that's him.
Is this the class that you had to drop out of?
Nah. Oh shit! I might be confusing him with if Blakemore is. I'm pretty sure it's Blakemore. So I took him in that same semester I dropped out. So I might be confusing them, but but anyway, sorry to derail here. Summary.
Such a great book. I'm so glad you didn't get it, man. Another great book, the same premise, honestly, is Stoner, which is a lot shorter. It's only 200 pages. Human Bondage is 600. So you can probably just get Stoner. But Stoner is fucking depressing. Anyways.
Anyways.
They're both very philosophical books that are very mired in the problems of academia, like we were just talking about. Sorry, my throat's giving out. Want to start on these poems?
Yeah.
John, stop forcing it.
What's that? Forcing what?
And
what do you think of these poems, Craig?
I really like them. Have you started the thing? I didn't hear the thing go off.
Oh, we've been recording this whole time.
Awesome.
So ever since you got back from taking a shit.
Nice.
So everybody knows.
Yeah, I'm on steroids. I'm taking horrible shits lately. All right.
Anyway, Edgar Kunz, Craig. I just found this guy. My friend from grad school. The only friend I talked to from grad school sent me these poems because I gave him a Philip Levine book once, and he fucking loved him. And
is
there's not a lot.
Friend, or is this somebody your friend reads?
Some of my friend reads, yeah. So he sent me these poems by Edgar Kunz, and I was like, I think he sent me Close. and I was like, shit, man, this shit's right up my alley. It's a lot like Philip Levine, like has
Yeah,
that same kind of
very much so. Very much
the
blue
same
collar.
blue collar, the cadence, the turn is always like a way of like understanding what he's writing about, and he changes the tone of his authority over the language. The fucking titles are a lot like Philip Levine. Let's be real
Yeah,
here. You got
this guy is very,
my
very.
father at 49 working the night shift at B&R Diesel. Tap Out, which is the title poem. Philip Levine always had a title. His title poem like was the banger, and I think that's definitely the banger of these three that we're reading, and it's easily the best poem in the book. So a lot of Philip Levine influences, and I'm like, you don't really get. I don't. Unfortunately, maybe I'm just like living under a rock, but I don't get a lot of Philip Levine vibes these days when I go and read poetry, like online or in a magazine. So it's kind of refreshing just to read somebody that's just telling a story, um,
I'm telling a story through like almost like pure iron. I'm going to tell you a story, and I'm not going to hold anything back. And I'm going to close in on the darkest points of the story, and I'm going to deliver everything to you as an image. Um, and I'm almost going to bombard you with images that tell the story for me. And
yeah.
through that, you almost get a kind of song. Especially with Tap Out. Tap Out sounds like the lyrics of a song. Not
Yeah,
just
when he like starts catching fire, it's very rhythmic, Like he does a repetition thing, if you notice, like towards the end of that poem, and
well, throughout the whole thing. I think we were vicious, swollen cheekbones, bruised jaws, forearms chafed raw and weeping. The Boston crab, the Texas cloverleaf, the cross-faced chicken wing. One time, Aunt wrenched my shoulder so hard I couldn't lift my arm for a week. Another time, Mike's brother, Daryl, tried a front flip slam off the back steps, landed face first in the dirt. Wrist bone shot clear through the skin and gleaming. Mike's dad worked secondhand shift at Pratt, so if we were loud, he'd holler out the bedroom window, but there was nothing he could do to punish us we weren't already doing to each other. And we knew it. Like that time Daryl showed us a pistol, a 22 he lifted from a friend's house. We passed it around, weighing it in our palms. It was heavier than it looked, but it felt good. He put the barrel on his mouth, and when we jumped up, he laughed and laughed. Priceless, he said, red faced and gasping. You pussies almost wet your pants. I mean, the fucking poem just very. They almost like the sentences almost sound like punches.
yeah, it's really
There,
cool, right?
there's a there's a
Actually, on not we'll get back to the part you just read because I think it's cool that you stopped there because that's like right in the middle of the poem before it
yeah.
launches into that second part. Anyway, when we said punches, like that last poem too, the one with the staggered lines, it's just jab jab cross, jab jab cross, like these really strong stressed syllables that are kind of like bouncing off a fucking punching bag. That's what it felt like to read it, and that's just how he's writing these poems for sure.
There's no one left to see his hands. This is from my father at 49 working a night shift at B&R Diesel. There's no one left to see his hands lifting from the engine bay, dark and gnarled, as roots dripping river mud. No one to see how his palms, slabs of callus, from scouring the long throats of chimneys, hauling motor and brick, move in the fabricated light. Thumb knuckle, thick and white, the grub where the box cutter bit.
Right there, man. Jab,
Yeah.
jab. Bam! Fucking haymaker. I love that
Split
shit.
nail, grown back, scalloped, and crooked. I mean,
He's,
just
yeah,
like
man, it's good shit.
just this is what we mean when we say the power of images. The images have to tell the story. You have to get the fuck out of the way of the images. You have to trust the images are strong enough and compelling enough and interesting enough to just keep going.
Right.
Um,
This is in that poem, the case of like the form following all that. Like you start with the images and you just kind of deliver them. But the form like helps it even. Like I didn't really think about the form until like basically the fifth time I read the poem. But the way the lines move just kind of help, those jabs land, a little bit, just a little bit. It doesn't do much. But if the images weren't there, you'd be a little suspicious. Why the fuck are those lines like that?
Right.
Is it just trying to look pretty? I mean, it does look pretty, but like I've written. Look, I'm suspicious because I've done it for no good reason. Like I made a form, like you fuck around with format, with structure without any reasoning, then you get yourself in trouble. This one doesn't do that. And even
I
the
dated
line,
a girl who did that a lot. Not Luke, but the other one. And you're just like really captivated by form. But form is like the icing on the cake. I mean,
form follows function. I mean, it goes back to the old saying right there. You got to have the meat and the potatoes. That and it has to make sense together. Otherwise, like I said, the reader or I, as the reader, would be like, all right, what are you doing? Let's just write a poem, But
ultimately, it doesn't matter. What matters is the story that you're telling, which is why we like the first one the most, because I think that's the best story. The weird story is the middle one, but the first story is definitely it's a poem that you read and forget it.
When I first read it, I was just like, okay, I'm just rolling with it. I'm not really like expecting anything. And then the fucking reprise of the gun in the mouth ringing out throughout the neighborhood. I'm like, God damn, dude. Like, he just fucking talk about a haymaker. He's just mic drop right there. That's just like, you can't. It's so simple, too. It's not like he's trying to do. Let's not speculate how the poem is written, but dude, that line just kind of comes out of nowhere. What's up?
What John's talking about is the second half. Where continuing on with a tap out, he goes, "We learn new moves, new ways to shock the body into miracles of pain," which, by the way, is a gorgeous line.
Yeah. Also, very Levine-esque.
Yes. The figure 4 leg lock, the vice grip, every muscle trembling, the tarantula, the camel clutch, mouth press against their ear, hissing, "Tap out, dickhead. You're not getting out of this. Your mind, kid. Tap out and it'll stop." The sharpshooter, the hammer lock, the sour hot breath in your ear, and knowing you won't give in. You won't give them the satisfaction, even when it hurts more than anything. When your dad's belt blistering your backside, more than the night when Daryl put the gun in his mouth and the sound of it woke up the whole block. So much you grit your teeth against pain, sharp kneecap bearing down on your chest, elbow toward past its limit, and you swear you could bust out of yourself and look down at your body, helpless and small and trembling. Press your mouth to your own ear and whisper, "Not you, not you."
Fuck yeah. Damn, dude.
Crazy. It's crazy how violent the poem is and how tender it is at the same time.
Yeah.
And
man. How he turns the image of like wrestling into an image of grief. And like, that last line, like, means a couple, like, it could mean a couple different things. And it's even foreshadowed somehow, like, mouth pressed against your ear, hissing, "Tap out, dickhead," that part. And then it goes to the end, mouth to your own ear and whisper, "Not you, not you." Man, dude, it's just like when you talk about a story. Like I'm for some reason I'm thinking of Philip Roth. Like it felt like no wrong turns in that story. Remember we talked about that? Like it felt like at any moment he could have fucked this story up, if he just went the wrong direction with the character or the movement of the poem in this case.
Version of the Jews we're talking about.
Yeah.
And he could have taken the kids outside, and the kid would just running down the street. But he didn't. He took the kid to the roof.
But that's
a great place.
But that's Craig, that's why it is so impressive, because it feels like at any moment it could fall apart. And it's so sad though when it does too, because like as a reader you're like, oh shit, I was with it right up until this point. right? And then it all kind of falls apart. You made a bad decision here, blah blah blah. Thus the critique starts. This one, it just like you're teetering on the edge. It's so risky, you know. Like it could just unravel at any moment, and it doesn't. It just fucking sticks the landing like a you know
Well, it's about the
ballerina or
violence
some
of
shit.
childhood, and I mean, let's talk about the violence of childhood for a second. Which is what the poem is inviting us to do. I mean, um, let's talk about these kids. Also, these kids are just from broken homes, and this is the only way that they know how to express their love. I mean, I hate to keep bringing it back to love. This is the only way that they know how to express any emotion is through violence. All right.
I mean, this poem is a fucking love poem if I've ever read one to
Yeah.
Daryl.
It's love. It's a love poem about this kid, and
Yeah,
about and it's
and all
also
his friends.
in childhood in general. Very Stephen King esque. I miss the friends I had when I was 10, 15. You know,
Yeah,
because you'll never have friends like that again. Because friendship just doesn't mean the same thing when you're in your 30s and your 40s or your 50s or even your 20s. It's just not. You don't rely on your friends as much as you do when you're like 12 or 11. When you're 12 and 11, 13, I mean, your friends are your fucking world, dude.
yeah.
They they are the reason that you jump out of fucking bed in the morning, or they're the reason that if you don't have them, they're the reason you stay in bed all day. you know, um,
Here.
I've been both kids, and I guess you have too.
Yep.
um,
I was actually 12 years old. No, I was like 13, 14, about 14. I lost my best friend. I actually saw him recently. He's the one that was in that poem I sent you about my dad getting beaten by the SWAT team.
Yep.
Um,
How'd you lose them?
we just grew apart. He was kind of like he was a lot like my brother in a way, where he kind of grew up normal, like in a normal. We kind of grew up in a normal suburban kind of living situation, and like something happened. His parents were also divorced, but anyway, he was like I don't know, he had it all, man, as far as like a fucking teenager could, like, but he was just drawn towards that life, that like drugs and not necessarily. I don't actually know how deep he got into the gangs. Maybe he did actually. I didn't really talk to him about it because this all happened right after we stopped being friends, and I saw where it was going because I saw my brother going down the same fucking road, and I was like, I can't be a part of that, and I don't know how to talk to you about it either because I'm fucking 13, 14 years old. And yeah, he moved away, moved to a fucking Alaska, and then got into a bunch of trouble with the law and drugs there. And
I remember you telling me about this guy actually a long time ago. Um,
yeah, but he's doing well now. He's doing pretty well now. He's married and lives in St. Pete.
well, cheers to him. It's
Yeah.
one of the very few who fucking came through the other side.
Yep. It's
Um,
rare, man.
with me,
Rare.
like I was the kid getting into
I
the
know.
fucking
Yeah. You made it through too, so congrats to
yeah.
you. People like my brother and your brother definitely didn't make it through. Most people I
No,
don't think do.
most people don't.
And if they're still alive, they're probably in jail or fucking just still living that
Or their
same.
lives are just totally wrecked, and
Yeah.
they're out there living on the street, or they're living hanging on the edge of the edge of the next fucking paycheck or whatever. Which I'm not
It's
too far away from that, but far
I
enough away.
know. It's
Far
funny
enough.
that we're bitching about like academia and you know
I mean, it's just because life
healthcare and
and life is just hard no matter what
I
career you
guess
choose. But yeah, I'm glad. I'm glad that it's because of academia I made it through. So I
that's an ironic thing, huh?
I always remember that no matter how pissed I get at uh, FAU or anyone else, for how difficult it was or how stupid some of the classes were. I realize, like, talking to your average everyday Joe, just how much easier I'm able to navigate things, and how easily I'm able to like pinpoint the thesis of their arguments and pick them apart. So it hasn't been all for naught. It's just fucking difficult. But speaking of which, getting back to the poems, especially this poem, the turn comes out of nowhere. Um, but it
It
also does,
does. It doesn't, right? It does, but it doesn't. It feels like it
right.
does when you first read it, but it's foreshadowed.
Of course, it's foreshadowed. But you couldn't read the first couple lines and know where it was going either.
Hell no.
You know.
Hell no.
So in a way, it functions just like a story's supposed to, right? Where I don't think anybody should read the first 2 pages of your short story and know where the story is going, um, or
Well,
what the point of it's going to be.
and when you're writing it, you probably shouldn't know either.
No, you shouldn't. You can't. You can't, because if you are, you're not surrendering to the mysteries of life and the mysteries of why you're doing this thing. It has to kind of pull you along the same way it pulls the reader along. So there's like this invisible little cane or hook or whatever that's kind of like tugging you through the point of the story. I don't think Dostoevsky knew when he was writing Crime and Punishment that Raskolnikov was going to kill these 2 women. I think he was just writing like, he's full of doubts and he's thinking about it, but he isn't sure if he's going to do it or not. And then as he did it, he was as surprised as the reader was. And then everything else that unfolded in that story, was as surprising to him as it was to everyone else. And and everything else. But I feel the same way for this writer. Even if Daryl was a real person and really did kill himself, I don't think that he came into this poem knowing that that's what he was going to write it. That was going to be the point of the poem.
I think you got these moments. Like, you kind of bury this type of shit, a lot of times, and even if you're a poet, even if you're constantly trying to dig stuff up, you're kind of burying it. And my feeling is this poem was about kind of what you were talking about, childhood and like the wrestling. But no, the reason why all that was beautiful is because Daryl was there, and that's what I think the realization that happens at that point in the poem. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, maybe I will write that poem one day, but you can never force it. If you go into the poem thinking you're going to write, oh, this is the poem where my brother dies, I'm going to talk about that moment. I've done that a lot. It doesn't always come out so great, only when it comes at me sideways, it comes at me from the back of my head or whatever, the side of my eye or whatever. In the middle of writing the poem, you realize what you're really writing about. Those are the magical moments when you're fucking sitting down and putting line after line, and then that line. Look how simple it is, Craig. More than a night, when Daryl put that gun in his mouth and the sound of it woke the whole block. That's the line you remember. That I will remember of this poem whenever I think of it right away. And it's just so simple. It is an image, but it's not like trying to do anything. It's just, this is what happened. And, you get that image of the sound ringing out through the neighborhood. It's just special, man. It's definitely a once in a lifetime poem, of course. You only get one of these, and he gave it to us. Luckily, somebody was there to write it. That's actually a theme in all these poems, that he's there to write it, especially the ones about his dad too, but definitely about Daryl and wrestling his kids. And I definitely relate to that. I'm sure you do too, because you've seen so many people that'll just, if they're not dead already,
and just
they're just gonna like, think about your parents, when I think about my parents, it just, the thing that always like used to make, I guess it still does a little bit, the thing that like always haunted me was that they're just gonna wallow away and they're gonna go away, you know, just like my brother did, and there's gonna be nobody to speak about it, you know, 100 years from now, nothing will be left, and the same thing will happen to me. And yeah, I know that's like kind of a fool way of thinking about life, because eventually everything's forgotten, no matter how well it's written, no matter, you know, how much you loved them or loved doing it. It all goes away, but it's still fucking haunting. And I think that's kind of where these poems are coming out of, man. He's trying to honor these people that maybe nobody else could love or loved quite the same way that he does.
Or just about, this is just what his life was like, you know. I mean, the honor is important.
Well, it gets you to write it at the
Right.
very least.
It's definitely a good motivator. So, besides my brother, one of the first people in my life to commit suicide that was close to me was this guy named Daniel. Oddly enough, I wrote a long time
You
ago.
cut out when you said his name. Did you mean to?
No, Daniel Whitty. And it was this thing that haunted me when I first met you guys. Like,
Yeah.
just how brief his life was and how ugly it ended. Just really, really, how to put it. So he was this really, he was a drug dealer, blonde-haired, tall, white guy. Worked as basically like almost like a slave for this restaurant called the Anchor Inn. That doesn't exist anymore either. But he would go there every day and he'd mop up the floors. And because he mopped up every day, they would feed him. And I think that was like the one meal of a day he was able to get. But then after he mopped up, he'd be a waiter's aide, and then he was a waiter. And his home life was just like wretched shit. His father was also a drug dealer. His father was really abusive.
Right.
He left the house, but then he came back and he got into this fight with his dad. And he had a gun at the time, but I guess instead of turning it on his dad, or maybe they got into a fight or something, but he ended up shooting himself in the chest and dying. And
in front of his dad?
yeah, in front of his dad. His brother, so racked by grief, his older brother, oddly enough, that he came back to live with his dad, and within 2 years had killed himself through drugs. And now, oddly enough, speaking of childhood friends, I met Daniel Whitty when I was like 17. One of my childhood friends was named Mark Fitzgerald, and he was like my friend at like 14. Turns out he was a cousin of Daniel Whitty, and now he's living at the same house.
Oh my god!
So I just
talk about a fucking horror story. That's some Alan Wake 2 shit, man.
Yeah. So I'm talking to him like, bro, get the fuck out of that fucking house, man.
A
Like,
dark place, dude. That's a fucking vortex of death.
like, why live there? Of all the fucking places, I joined the Navy, man. I'd start sucking dick to get the fuck out of
Do
there.
anything, man. I'd go to grad school.
I don't know. And especially that house, man, like this house right on Lake Osborne. It's like just gated up, but by gated up I don't mean like it's a gated community because it's in the hood. I mean it's like it's just a shitty old ramshackle fucking house. In which like all this fucking pain and horror and shit is, just been going on and on for decade after decade after decade. And I wrote about it. But I wrote about it,
Right.
because it was this thing that haunted me. And so this poem reminded me a lot of that part of my life, of trying to understand. Like I knew Daniel. By the way, Dan was also somebody like he'd come back to the waiter station and be like, he'd be like, yeah, about the only one who's going to come to my funeral's Craig, I guess.
Really?
That's how he'd start the conversation of the day. And I'd be like, sure, Dan, I'll be there. You bet your ass, man. He's like, yep.
Craig, did you go?
I didn't, oddly enough, because oddly enough, another one of my friends, this kid named David, who was also friends with Dan, I saw him like the week after it happened. And he didn't tell me. Nobody told me.
Nobody fucking told you.
Dude,
of course.
I didn't find out until I called Dan and tried to buy drugs off him. And his brother answered the phone. So that's how stupid I am. If I'd have known he was dead, I would have gone.
Absolutely. So you're the guy that calls the dead brother looking for drugs. I remember those people.
Yep. Hey, staying around.
Wow.
Yeah.
Of course, the only person that would go to his funeral would be the last person to know about it. So
yeah. No, I heard a lot of people went actually. I don't know. He was not. He's not a very kind human being, but in fact, he was honestly a piece of shit and a bully. But he was also a friend of mine to some degree, to the degree that a person like that could be a friend to anyone.
Right, you loved them for some reason, right? Like because
Well,
he meant something to you at the time.
I loved them because for all the shit that everyone gave me, they could not give Dan. They just could not do it. They give him different kinds of shit, but they could not bully him at all. Dan beat the shit out of everyone in that fucking place, including his own boss.
What?
Like I don't think he ever put his hands on Todd physically, but every chance he got to talk shit to Todd to his face, he would do it. He'd be like, "Hey, old Todd, bitch, fuck you old fucking fart, fuck you." You just do that in front of like the whole crew, and Todd couldn't get rid of him because uh, Dan was the one who mopped up the place every fucking
They
day.
needed him. They needed him.
And he showed up. He literally worked every day, so Todd couldn't get rid of him. But every time he turned around, he was just talk shit to Todd. Old Todd, bitch ass, fuck. What the fuck? And Todd was like this old guy who's like with this gray hair, and he just stared at Dan until Dan walked away. Like Dan be like, "Don't fucking look at me. Don't fucking look at me, you old fucking fart motherfucker." I don't know. It was just funny. Like I know we're getting way off topic, but there were things about Dan and just his physical strength that I admired. And then of course, I mean, after I left the Anchor Inn, I'd meet people who were infinitely stronger than Dan could have ever hoped to be, but and infinitely smarter and infinitely more compassionate. But when you're 22, and you're a weakling, you admire people like that. And when he killed himself, I was like, well, goddamn. It honestly reminds me a lot of Brandon. Now that I think of Brandon in his life, I'm like, these people valued the wrong things in life, and you could never persuade them to value anything else. It's like physical, strength and and stubbornness are not the end all be all to life on this planet.
No. I wonder what happened to you, because you admired him because of his strength, and I guess partially his stubbornness. So what changed? You just grew out of it, or you saw him kill himself? Yeah. I guess that might have done something.
Well, first of all, that happened. So yeah. So here's a funny story too. Not to keep throwing another monkey wrench into these poems. We are going to talk about these poems at some point, but I found out he killed himself the day I was going to hook up with this chick who was coming down from Michigan to Florida because I was just getting off house arrest, right? So I hadn't like been with any women, and I hadn't really seen any women in like 6 months.
Oh God, where's this story going, Greg? This is gonna be a real sad story. I have a feeling.
Sort of.
Or hilarious.
So I find out. I talked to Dan's brother. His name's Chris. And Chris tells, like, luckily Chris never found out the purpose of that initial phone call. Maybe he guessed, maybe he didn't. But I just started like because I thought I was talking to Dan. I just started talking to him, and I didn't get around. I didn't want Dan to think I was just calling him to buy some pot, but I'm just talking to him, and Chris just lays the fucking bombshell on me. He's like, "Yeah, fucking shot himself in the chest. He's fucking dead." And I just started like walking around the neighborhood, like I didn't know what to do. And I told my little brother, and my little brother told my dad. My dad went out looking for me and picked me up and drove me home. He was trying to talk to me about death, but my dad's not particularly good at talking to people about that stuff. So he kind of just like fumbled his way around it a little bit. Meanwhile, like, so I'm grieving, but I'm also like, in the back of my mind, I'm like, man, this chick is coming down in like 18 hours. I need to fucking find a way to Cocoa Beach because I'm trying to get fucking laid. And the initial plan was to give the person who was driving me some pot to drive me down there. So after my dad takes me back home, like an hour later, I'm in this chick's car and she's driving me to Cocoa Beach to meet this other chick that's actually interested in me, right? The person who's driving, even though she's technically a female, had 0 interest. Okay. My dad flips out because he thinks I'm going to kill myself now. He thinks that I'm like,
oh really?
He thinks that I'm full of grief. And I'm like, Dad, I'm just trying to get laid. So it's kind of funny in that end, but
your poor dad. He had no idea what to do.
No, I mean, what can you do?
You can't do anything. That's the thing. But he wanted to. That's the part that's kind of sweet.
Meanwhile, I'm like 21. I'm in that like weird stage where they're kind of your kid and they're kind of not your kid anymore, and they're adults and you be.
Yeah.
Or maybe I was like 20. Anyway,
that stage lasted for about till about 25, I'd say, for me. And in between.
Yeah.
Well, then again, my brother did die when I was 22, so
yeah, it's tough.
They ain't gonna let me go that fast.
They didn't want you to go anywhere, at that age. Anyways, so I don't know.
I was thinking of when you were telling the story about your friend. I think the other reason, so like to honor, like you want to honor, if you're writing a poem about somebody who died, obviously it gives you like that urgency. To honor them is a little far, I think. Sometimes that's what you want to do, but like it really just gives you the urgency that you should always kind of have when you go to write a poem. But I think something like if you're looking at it in terms of like catharsis, it also allows you to like encapsulate maybe like the suicide in like a way that you can understand, like this poem definitely gives meaning to the suicide for the author, right? Like
you asked why did I stop admiring them? It's because
oh yeah.
The reason I was trying to get to is because I discovered women. I discovered like beautiful women in the world.
Right, you just looked around and you're like, oh, there's things to do and to strive for.
Yeah, and and I also realized just how random life is. It's just like, I mean, I think
it kind of sucks because what you're
I think
saying
for my brother,
basically is it
they,
boils
they
down. Sorry, what?
with my brother and Dan, they never really saw the randomness of life as a virtue. Like to them, it was just random ways that the world could fuck them over. That's the only thing that they believed in. And for me, um, my life hasn't been like that. My life has been like, okay, here's a good friend of yours, Craig, that you're gonna lose. Here's a girl to play bouncy with. right when you find out that it's gonna happen. You
Right, it's
know,
absurd.
here's this um girl that wants to be a boy. You're gonna date her for a little while. And when you lose her and you're at the depths of, your depression and angst and you're feeling you're feeling pain, here's the strip club. You know? Here's like fucking 100 more people just like her. Go fucking muse on that for a little while. And also here's a fucking married woman. Have fun with that. Like to me the randomness of life has never ceased to be amusing on some level. Maybe it's perverse amusement at certain points. Maybe it's not perverse. Maybe it's, true love. But it's never stopped being engaging. That's why uh, that's one of the things that helped me get through. Not to mention, here's Nick LaRocca, here's, you know, Jonathan Mundell. There's all these crazy characters who are all going to be these great writers, and you find stuff that you're good at also um, as you're moving along in life. And it makes the game worth playing to me.
Yeah, yeah. What you're describing, when I cut you off earlier, is basically a genetic dice roll. Like genetic, circumstantial, all that crap. It's all just
Right.
like you just had the right mind outlook, I guess, to deal with it. Like certain people couldn't do that, won't do that, and whatever. It doesn't make any. It doesn't make. I think it is definitely a better view of the world to kind of look at it as like an absurd thing that you can laugh at because it is all kind of absurd and silly. Um, and to have but also at the same time to have the earnestness to want to write about it and preserve it for some reason is also kind of interesting. Um, it is that's the thing that always kind of gets me though, because whenever I come up with a reason for it, it just doesn't. Maybe it circles back around, like the reason for it is because it's just fun, you're just sticking around, just write a poem about it. But at the same time, you're crying when you're writing the poem, and you don't really know why, and you're trying to understand something about the world too at the same time. So yeah, I mean, these are
The
some
whole
good poems, Craig. I mean, I don't know if you have anything else. Do you have any? You want to talk about the other ones?
Yes, I do actually. I want to talk about the second one.
Okay.
A lot. All right. So this one threw me for a little bit of a loop, John.
Okay.
I'm still trying to understand it. Now I know that it's not as good as the first, but it damn near might be one of the weirdest fucking poems I've ever read in my life.
Yeah. It's well, I think so. I think what's happening, and it isn't like super clear what is
Right.
actually happening.
That's the
Um,
issue.
well, I think it's simple, man. I think it's his dad. I think he's probably. It
His
doesn't
dad is
say that
hugging Ian, right? His dad is just giving him a hug. And
his
like, I
dad
don't
is drunk, so yeah, he's probably just giving him a hug. But I think he's also trying to teach him how to do something practical. He's like backing a loaded truck up to a brick wall or a ledge or something to be unloaded. Would be
right.
my
So
you can
drunk and he's teaching him how to do his job.
yeah, basically.
So
And then
this is
it gets weird at the end. Like it gets like close and like intimate.
yeah, and he's the closeness of the truck to the wall
Becomes a
is
metaphor, yeah.
a metaphor for the closest of the two of them. By the way, we haven't talked about this, but another thing I admire about this poet is how he starts his poems. Already, so the first one started We were vicious, swollen cheekbones, bruised jaws. The second poem starts. Off early from B&R Diesel, sharp with liquor and filtered kings, he drifts across the double yellow, swings into an iced over lot. And the third poem starts. There's no one left to see his hands lifting from the engine bay, dark and gnarled as roots dripping river mud. No one to see how his palms, slabs of callus, from scouring the long throats of chimneys, hauling motor and brick move in the fabricated light. Um, that is how you start a goddamn poem. It almost feels like you're starting in the middle of the story. You know, things are moving along so fast at the beginning that you can't help but be carried along till the end. If somebody just handed me these poems off the street, I'd get to the end of them.
Right,
No matter what.
things are happening. It's fucking concrete. You don't, it sets up the premise, even though it does feel like kind of in medias res, like in the middle of it. Yeah, man, that's a really good point.
There's also
The
a
beginning of the poems are
and a tempo that that you're already kind of being swept away. It doesn't start at 0 and go to 100. It starts at like 30 and goes to 100. You know what I mean?
I feel like it's more like it starts at 30 and it kind of just chugs along and it picks up a little steam and then it fucking stops and then it blasts off. That's how this poem is for me anyway.
Right.
Like
Yeah,
it goes all the way
all
to the turn for me, like when he says that he's still beautiful, my father, fluid, powerful. Before that it's just like you're right, it's kind of like describing a narrative. He's teaching me how to do something. He's teaching me how to drive. He's teaching me how to back the truck up to the wall. And then he reflects on it, and it kind of like goes to a standstill, and then it just kind of builds up really fast from there. And the way he makes it happen is through like a mixture of reflection and like continuing the prior established narrative. And it when it works, it coalesces into like a really cool ending, and it's
let me just read. It's short enough to read. Off early from B&R Diesel, sharp with liquor and filtered kings, he drifts across a double yellow, swings into an iced over lot. He runs me through the basics: K turn, parallel, back end, jerks the Sierra in the reverse, and eases the bumper up against the side of the old bank building. We meet at the end of the loaded bed, exhaust and brake light pooling around our knees. He balls the front of my coat in his fist, pulls me close to show the distance between bumper and brick, pulls hard until I'm up against the slender arc of his collarbone, the fine dark stubble shading his jaw, his hollowed out cheeks. He's still beautiful, my father, fluid, powerful. His bare forearm corded with muscle, bristling in the cold. Yes, he's drunk.
He's drunk. Yes.
I have already begun the lifelong work of hating him, a job that will carve me down to almost nothing. I've already begun to catalog every way he has failed me. Yes. And here he is, home early from a day's shift in Fall River, teaching me what I need to know.
It's pulling. Sorry,
pulling me roughly towards him. The last half hour of sunlight blazing in his face, saying, "This is how close you can get." Asking if I can see it, if I know what he means, saying this close, like this. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Poem.
Great.
Do you see what I mean though? Like when he says he's beautiful, you kind of slow down because he's no longer like describing the scene. He's just describing his father, and he's kind of describing their relationship too.
Reflection.
Oh yeah,
reflection on the relationship, but it's a very short reflection. It's just like it's. In fact, I wouldn't call it reflection. I just call it exposition. I mean, I guess the two words are almost synonymous, but he's just talking about his father as a human being, as opposed to everything that's happening right there. And by the way, my problem with this poet is, what we're calling scene almost feels a little bit more like summary for all these poems. I think that's the real crutch between what's holding him back from being Philip Levine. Honestly, Philip Levine could do all this, but could do it in scene. It could put you in the moments. Whereas Edward Kunz, is that his name? Kunz?
Kunz.
It's kind of, he's held back by summary. Held back by of what was going on and what life was like back then. It's like, I don't want the fucking gist. You know what I mean? This is what holds Chin back so much.
Right.
I want the fucking gist. I want the fucking.
I've actually, I felt that too a little bit. Yeah, it's like it's a little ironically, it's not as close to the scene as like I personally would want it to be, but it's still I still it's commendable though, because like as we talked about in the poem that like the probably the best poem of the bunch that we're talking about here, it still has it's still like a whole narrative. Like as far as a narrative goes, it's all there. But yeah, it doesn't like the scenes themselves are like, you're right, like a gist.
Rocky
like
4 is all a narrative. It's just all fucking, what's the word? Montage. This is like 4 fucking montages in the fucking movie. There's a complete narrative there, sure. But, you know what I mean? Like, the reason it's not The Godfather is because The Godfather tells the story, the whole goddamn story, or almost the whole goddamn story through scene. There's a little montage in The Godfather of the newspaper reels telling you like how things are progressing with the mob wars and everything. But there's a montage in Scarface too of the road to from rags to riches, where they're just counting money through the machines and they're carrying bags of fucking cash into the banks and shit. So it's not that summary can't be used effectively, but I think it should be used sparingly for both short fiction writers and for poets especially, man. You'd think that you guys would get away with more summary.
Well, the thing is, like, I feel like maybe that's your disconnect with this poem, is I feel like the intent is to be as close into the scene as possible, but there are a couple missteps. Whereas the other poem, we don't, because the narrative lands so well, we don't really question it, because it's the same way in the other poem, in the first tap out as well. But in this poem, where, like, look at this, and here he is right after that last yes, and here he is home early from a day shift in Fall River, and like that, here he is signals granular, get right there, and here he is, the smell of whatever on his fucking, he's right, he can smell him. Like, give me a smell, give me a tactile like feeling or something. That's really
he
there.
just gives you fluid, powerful. It's like, that's not enough, man. Fluid and powerful is not fucking enough.
This is a thing that I practice, man. I remember writing my brother was a fish, and there was this part where I was getting a little too kind of like broad strokey, and I was like, no, he drops the match. It doesn't hit the ground. He drops it, or no, the firecracker explodes. And it just doesn't explode. It leaves something, and it's there, twigs and dirt, like something like that is there now, and you can see that. But you don't really get like. I'm not saying that, whatever. I don't want to compare, but I feel like that was a slight misstep instead of home early, because then he's going back to a exposition, a narrative, instead of like showing the scene. So it like indicates a little bit that maybe, he's not quite in the scene, like that close to the scene, which is I think it's still fine. It's not like, I know what am I trying to say here? It's still a good poem. It's
never gonna be great.
It lands. It still lands. It's a slight like, oh, you could have got a little closer. So.
Well, you see what I'm saying? Like, if this is the 3 best from the book, then that's what's holding him back, more than likely. If I was diagnosing like what's keeping this guy at a 6 instead of being at an 8 where he belongs. He definitely has the writing chops of being an 8 or a 9. It's the unwillingness to commit to scene, and to unwillingness to commit to like the images of a scene delivering to the reader the emotional impact that those things would. Because here's the thing. Here's the weird thing about life is, is that the things that you remember about people, because they matter to you, they will matter to the reader. You have to trust that notion. You have to trust that the notions or the notion that whatever was happening in the scenes of your life, if they were effective to you, if they're memorable, if they've lasted through the years, if the brain has changed them, whatever, part of its imagination, whatever. If it means something to you, it's going to mean something to the reader. So you said just now, deliver to me a smell. Like, imagine if his dad smelled like cheap Polo cologne, you know?
Right. Yeah, something like that.
And he gave you that sense, like, smell of cheap Polo cologne and dirt, and sweat, unwashed laundry, whatever, you know?
Well, it's tough because that thing has to be important to you
Well, you
too.
have,
It can't just be
right.
a random ass detail.
Well, that's the thing is, the smell of your father is always going to be important to you. Remember what your dad smells like? I can tell you what your dad smells like.
Cheap Polo cologne.
Cheap Polo cologne, sweat, the laundry detergent that your parents, like your whole house kind of smells like it.
He's been working in the car, he smells like
Grease,
sweat.
oil,
Yeah, BO.
and red stripe.
Red stripe, fuck yeah.
And those that like 2 hits of the cigarette through a filter that he always keeps on the windowsill.
You're getting somewhere, Craig. Write this poem for me. I'm taking credit. It's my fucking dad, all right? If I wrote a poem about your dad at the strip club, man, it came out beautiful, I would give it to you.
Craig wrote this about my father, but I'm gonna read it. Fuck you and fuck him.
I would, dude. My poem. I would change it a little bit, make it better.
Better because I'm a poet. Fuck you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but you see what I mean? Like, the smells are so important to people, to how people are received, and what it really says about them. I don't know. I have a really terrible sense of smell. I can tell you, Finn always smells like fucking marshmallows, and because he's always eating the marshmallows out of Lucky Charms, and he's eating those puff things all the time. Kid fucking lives on like puffed up food.
Well, I'll tell you what, Craig. Do not write a poem about how Finn smells, or if you do, don't send it to Leo.
Yeah, I'm gonna end up on that Epstein list.
Yeah, real dude. That's a good note to end. I mean, look, I think you're like, I don't disagree with you. I really love Tap Out, and I think these 2 poems are really good too. But yeah, there are a lot of. I mean, that's a good hitting.
That's indicative. And by the way, I think that's a problem that's indicative of Amari Barak also. Black art is a fucking 1 in a trillion type of poem. But the reason every other poem he wrote sucks is because he couldn't commit to scene. Because he couldn't just talk about his dad or his mom, or his brother, his little brother, or whatever the fuck.
Right. Well, at least Kunz is like there. He's committed to talking about father.
Right. Yeah, he's talking about the right things, but you have to talk about them as they are, and I don't. So poetry, to me, more is kind of like photography. You're taking pictures, and you really only have enough space to sell me on this one image anyway, right? And it's all these other images that sell the one big painting. That's why we like that one poet, who was writing about her sister and comparing her to Marilyn Monroe. What's her name? I know you know the name.
No, what do you mean?
Her sister was taking all these pictures of Marilyn Monroe, and in the next stanza, her father was beating her with a belt, and she was telling her father, "Just do it again, do it again." And he hits her with the belt again, and hits her with the belt buckle. And then he leaves the house. She doesn't even like flinch. He leaves the house and he's driving away, and he keeps seeing her in the rear view. She follows him like the moon. You don't remember that poem?
Oh yeah, Dorian Locks. Yeah, we talked
Yeah.
about it.
And those two stanzas are just like two paintings, you know?
That's actually a great comp to him. Like when I read her book, like I got one of her older books the first time I encountered one of her poems online or whatever, or at the poetry festival. And it was like that. It was like, yeah, there was like some highs, and like I jived with all the work. You know what I mean? Because it was like it was all narrative and kind of sceney, you know.
Yeah.
But they don't all like hit. Like even in like so three poems, and I think there are more. There are more in this book that do hit, and so it has a pretty high batting average. But like when you think of Sharon Olds' like best books, that batting average is fucking astronomical.
Yeah.
Like Gold Cell,
Yep. Father,
Father, um,
Blood Tin, Straw Fire,
yeah. She had just
The
had like an
Wellspring.
Wellspring. She just has like incredible like I call it. She's I mean it's unfair really to compare anybody to her when it comes to like consistent greatness. Um, Even Philip Levine doesn't even touch it, dude.
No.
Um,
You have to go to the Leon Leagues, honestly, um, and he puts out way less work than she than
yeah.
she does. But I
Yeah,
think
yeah, well, yeah. I mean, anyway, this guy is
may
he's
just be the best poet of the. In fact, she is. She's the best poet of this generation. Of this past 50 years.
yeah,
Sharon Olds.
for me, for sure. I mean, Leon Lee is my fave, but
Who's coming out with a new
oh,
book soon?
oh, I know, I can't wait. It's gonna be, hopefully, it's really good.
Yeah. Hopefully, it's not just one big poem. I think that was the problem with the undressing. It's another.
He's somebody. Hey, talk about somebody who got out of academia. That's why he doesn't put out many books. He doesn't write to just write. You know, he puts out a book every 5-10 years, and fucking awesome, man. Love that guy.
He probably can live just off the sales of the books, and
I would love to know how much money he makes from poetry.
I mean,
He doesn't really read much. It's so hard to catch him.
yeah, but he's fucking world renowned, and he has been since he put out his first book. You know, so I don't know. I bet Sharon Olds makes a fucking shit ton of money just from teaching in her her collection and from all the readings that she does.
Readings, yeah.
But especially teaching at NYU. But I don't know. I bet Leon Lee cleans up decent. I bet he makes more than I do.
Let's we got to figure out a way to monetize poetry. It's so stupid.
Well, yeah, it is. I mean, we got to find some way to make it work for us. Because I really feel like uh, you, Jen, and Leo and Laura are going to be the poets of your generation. And the trick is to A, survive long enough to get famous and to push through. B, to not give up on the process by which the art is made, which I know is tempting. I know the idea of quitting just gets more and more appealing.
Oh
But
no,
I mean,
I've been in the process of quitting forever. I
yeah,
can't do
ever
it.
since I picked up a pencil, I've been trying to quit. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Writing is so like masochistic as a way of life because it's so, we talked about it at the beginning, it's so uncontrollable. I mean, you could control a lot, right? You could go to the right Well, you can go to the right readings, you can meet the right people. If as far as like networking, you can control that, and as far as like sitting down in the chair and forcing yourself to like get good at a technical level, you could force yourself to do that. But at a certain point, like to be great, to like write the poems that we all love, like you and I really love, um, to write something like Tap Out, or fucking The Simple Truth, or fucking, whatever the highest point of the poet that you know and like and love. Um, that is like almost impossible. Like you cannot control it. It's either gonna come like I don't know. I guess you could make a lot of right decisions. When I first read The Simple Truth, when I first really fell in love with it, the thought came to me like, yeah, that was the whole point of everything he ever wrote. Like to get to that point, to get to the moment where he wrote that. Because you don't just sit down and write that at 22. You can't.
No.
You have to have the education. You have to have
It
met the
would
right
suck
people.
if you did, because everything else you put
Yeah,
out
it would
after
really
that
suck. I mean,
be
fucking
after
Philip Roth wrote Conversion of the Jews at 25. But you have to like commit yourself to the life that would lead up to that thing. So like living as a poet and committing to that life is just as important as just sitting down and writing. Sitting down and writing is part of it, I think. Especially early on, like you have to develop your chops. There's no way around that. You have to encounter the right people. There's really no way around that, and that's a lot of luck, man.
all luck.
It's all fucking luck. You have to have the right conversation at the right time. You have to read the right thing at the right time. There's just so
It
many
goes
things that
further
coalesce.
back than that though. Like why would you want to do these things to begin with, right? Like something in your life has to have gone so wrong that you realize on some level this really nihilistic view of the world that nothing matters, that at the end of the day all is permissible because there is no God or whatever. Or if there is a God, he's a very uncaring God, a very cruel God. Um, and for us, it was to seeing the degradation of our families. Hemingway's father was a suicide.
What's more holy than that when you're a kid? Your family, your parents, they
Right.
are like gods to you, and then you see them fail one by one, and then they die, or somebody dies, and it's like, oh, this is why I am nihilistic is the perfect way to put it. You get that like nihilistic bend, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not all
And
nihilism though. I mean, like you write because you're trying to. I think you write as a reaction to that. It's like pure nihilism is kind of fucking dreadful and bleak. I don't want to be that bleak. I'm just not that bleak. I don't think I can be. I can get there, but I have to fight it. Part of the tool set you have is writing. For me, anyway, that's kind of what I use to give meaning to things, even if it's just
Marilyn
small.
Manson used to say it's hard to admire yourself when you're a misanthrope. But Salvador Dali used to say that he always admired himself because he was the greatest catastrophe he ever knew.
Just imagine him saying that in his voice. It would have been fucking comic gold.
I am the
If I went
greatest
around saying that,
catastrophe
everybody
I've
would
ever
like
known.
cringe to death.
Yeah,
But
I am the greatest catastrophe I've ever known. And that is why I write.
no, no, it's not like that. He paints so well, so he can say shit like that, and people will listen to him.
Dude, you gotta,
And it, and
dude.
it
If,
will
if you
mean
ever want to
something.
laugh, man, turn on a fucking Dolly interview. You see some of the funniest shit you've ever seen in your life.
Oh, I've seen
People
a
like,
little bit.
all right, Dolly. They're like, you understand English, right? And he's like, yes, Dolly understands perfect English. But if you don't understand him, that's just even better because Dolly loves confusion.
It sounds like Finn. That's how Finn talks.
Yeah, it kind of is. It really
That's
is. Man.
that's awesome.
Well, that's why you have kids, man, is so you can have little dollies running around your house. Look at my butt. Look at my
Right.
butt. Look at my dinky.
Who's the most pure artist other than a child? You know, just saying the thing that came to their head, and it's like, oh, that's oddly brilliant, and you have no idea how brilliant what you said is, or maybe you do. I don't know.
I mean, that's definitely the reason, because kids have it right. You know, that's the funny thing about life is you get older and you get more and more entrenched in the world of adults. You know, but adults are fucking, listen, it's all stupid, man. You know, you work all day and pay bills. Like, are you fucking kidding me? Fuck that. I want to run around and draw on the fucking walls and fucking eat whipped cream all day. Fuck you. You know,
Exactly.
play with my dick, man.
Yeah.
There's a fucking life. There's a life that you can be fucking proud of. Anyways, I'm
All right,
picking
man.
the story next time. It'll be something catastrophic.
Yeah, let's do some stories. Let's do a string of stories, and the next time we do poetry though, I want to talk about Lee Young Lee. I think.
Hell the fuck yeah, man.
I already know the poems, but we will.
Dude, how do you feel
Like,
about doing another Hemingway?
oh my god, I don't know, dude. Which
You do
one?
another Hemingway? I want to do the one that I sent called "The Last Good Country." I'll resend it. It's kind of long. It's like 20 pages, but it's about him and his sister, and they're running from the law because he's been hunting wild game without a permit, and so they're hiding like in this meadow, which is him and his sister. It's great, fucking great,
All right, we'll
and
do
it's
it.
all seen through the
I don't know
whole
why I'm
fucking
saying it
thing.
like that.
It's dude, you'll read it tonight. I guarantee you. I fucking send this thing. You'll read it tonight. It's all dialogue, man. It's just 20 pages of fucking
No,
dialogue.
love me some fucking Hemingway. Let's do it.
And by the way, it's almost oddly enough like a prequel to the Two Big Hearted River. It feels like the Two Big Hearted River was written as Nick Adams coming back to this place, you know, and even though there's no flashbacks or anything about it, I feel like that's one of the reasons that story is so good. So maybe we'll be able to talk about that too, as we talk about this. Anyway, man, it'll make sense. It'll make sense when you get around to it.
All right, cool. All right,
All
man.
right,
I'll
buddy.
talk to you later.
Peace, buddy.
All right, bye.